Hey, Chargers fans, welcome back to the Guilty as Charged podcast. I'm so happy to be joined now by Trey Wallace, who covers the University of Tennessee Volunteers for Rocky Top Insider. Trey, thanks for joining us. How you doing today, man?
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here with you, man. And another busy day in college football, but it is what it is. Just another day in the SEC.
Absolutely right. The grind never stops. So obviously the Chargers did take Joshua Palmer from the University of Tennessee. I think a lot of Chargers fans were a little, surprised. But what was your kind of general reaction when you saw that the Chargers did take him in the third round?
I expected Josh to go somewhere between 3 and 5. I did. I thought he had enough tape that showed what kind of receiver he was. Maybe not, even the 2020 tape. But I think they could go back and look at the previous years as well and combine and just see what he did against some of the top defensive backs in the Southeastern Conference. And I think when they took a look at that, also, a shout out to Derek Ansley as well,
Right.
former defensive coordinator at Tennessee. When you look at what Josh Palmer has put together over the last couple of years, he is a reliable receiver who's going to make big plays for you down the field. And I think that's what the Chargers saw. I think that once they also talked to probably Derek Ansley, and Derek told him, hey, man, look, yeah, he was tearing our defensive backs up, during practice. And once they were able to look at film and see what he did against some of the top defensive backs in the SEC, again, I think it's a smart move by the Chargers because, you guys already have a pretty loaded wide receiver room, and this gives him time to learn it, the system, and it also gives him time to build up that rapport. So I thought it was a good pick. Did I think the Chargers were going to take him? Nah, that was kind of up in the air, but they did. They found the spot. They liked him, and I don't think they would waste a third-round pick on somebody they didn't like.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned, the competition aspect of things and, you can add in the Senior Bowl as well. And that's something that, Brandon Staley has talked about is like you saw Palmer be at his best against the best competition, in the SEC and at the Senior Bowl too.
Senior Bowl was big, and that's actually in my hometown of Mobile, Alabama. And so getting to watch Josh, getting to watch him all season, but getting that close-up version that we weren't able to get on a college landscape because of COVID, being down there in Mobile and seeing him go up against those guys, it showed me that he was ready. And it wasn't just, okay, let's look what defense Georgia's running and try to go up against it, or what's Alabama's running and try to flip Josh to the other side of the field, and put somebody at a disadvantage.
Right.
You saw at the Senior Bowl where he was going up against the top talent in the country and he was making plays. And I think That's the biggest thing for him too. And I'm sure we'll get into his game because his game is not line up in a slot. His game is line up to the outside, make your plays down the field, and then also a couple posts you can throw in there as well. He's a very, very reliable receiver and also just a fantastic kid.
Well, I'd like to go back in time a few years if we could. Obviously, comes from Canada, goes to St. Thomas Aquinas. What do you remember about his recruiting process, and was Tennessee always like a no-brainer? And what can you tell us about his decision to go play football at Tennessee?
Well, it wasn't always a no-brainer, coming from Canada and going to play. And I think a lot of people around the country, they know of St. Aquinas High School.
Yeah.
It's a money factor. I mean, they bring out some really good kids. And I think that with his recruitment, it wasn't always Tennessee. I mean, you could have thrown Florida State in there, Florida. You could have thrown Michigan in there, teams that were going after him. But when you looked at what Tennessee was trying to do with the offense at the time, you have to remember Josh Palmer went through all 4.5 years. I mean, at Tennessee. Yeah. So also that's three different styles of offense that he was running while he was here. I think he bonded with the first staff that was here. I think that the way that he was able to build up relationships with his teammates, he could have, I think Josh Palmer is a receiver that could have come out last year, but I don't know if it would have been 5 through 7 to me. I think with him coming back this past season and getting some more film on tape, especially that South Carolina game, where he just makes tremendous catch in the end zone, and he's reliable down the field. And if I'm not mistaken, it was over 80 yards catching in that game, but you also have to remember the quarterback situation. So going back to recruiting part of it, it wasn't always going to be Tennessee, but the Vols came along strong at the end. I think personally, they kind of found a diamond in the rough per se. And him ending up at Tennessee, man, he did some great things here. So recruiting was a little bit crazy. Wasn't just Tennessee, but I know fans are glad he ended up here.
Absolutely, I'm sure they are. You mentioned him as a great kid. You mentioned him as building relationships with the staff and his teammates. What kind of growth did you see, from him as a person over the 4 years that he was in Tennessee?
I saw growth from a kid. I'll just go back sophomore season where very shy. You also have to remember that Tennessee had players like Marquez Callaway, who's with the Saints now. They had players like Jawan Jennings, who's with the 49ers right now. They had receivers at the time when he first came along, and I'm just naming two. But so it took him a minute to figure out what his spot was at Tennessee. And then from a leadership standpoint, you had two alphas in Callaway and Jennings, definitely in Jennings. He was going to be the guy that was going to be the leader of the group. So when Jennings left before last season, it gave Palmer the opportunity to be that guy, and not just be that guy down the field that, Garantano is going to try to hit, on a 40 to 50-yard pass, but a guy in the locker room. He's a leader. Guys took after him and what they did. He mentored Jalen Hyatt, who's a receiver here at Tennessee right now, who is you'll see him in the NFL one day. But what I'm getting at is that he kind of, what he did was he kind of let those guys, okay, you're going to be the leaders, and then I'm going to be the leader once you leave. And that's kind of what you saw out of Josh Palmer. He's a great kid. He never got into any kind of nonsense at Tennessee. He handled himself professionally. And that's what I think they're going to get, with the Chargers, is somebody that they know is going to come in there, is going to put his head in the book. He's going to try to learn the offense, go forward.
Yeah, and that's something that he even mentioned. I don't know if you happen to see the call that he had with the Chargers when he got drafted, and like immediately he's like, "I need that playbook. I'm ready to go." And that just kind of speaks
just
to
like
me.
Josh.
Yeah. So I loved it. I mean, of all the the players that they've had the chance to interview and stuff like that, I think Josh has definitely shown his personality the most, and that's awesome, right? Because he's got that infectious personality.
Well, it's his work ethic too, and that's the thing. This is a kid that would stay 45 minutes to an hour after every practice on the jugs machine. In the wide receiver, he was with T. Martin a lot last season, learning the playbook. T. Martin, now the wide receivers coach for the Baltimore Ravens. So learning different aspects of how to be that wide receiver that they needed, and to be it in the SEC, which is very tough, not taking away anything else from any other conference, but it's just a different ball game. So
100%.
You saw him step up, and he's a learner, man. He's going to take the time to do it.
Oh man, so I went to the University of Utah, right? And every time I watch the college football playoff, I'm always like, this looks like a different sport to me, man. Like, it's just different. So I think you're spot on about the SEC for sure.
Well, you know what? It's last year I take out of the equation, because you're playing, unless you're Texas A&M and you had 60,000 fans in the stands, you were only playing in front of 20,000, 25,000 people, but it was still college football, and you knew that all eyes were on you. And I would tell people this about, if you go back and watch tape of Josh Palmer, you have to take into notice that Tennessee's quarterback situation was horrible last year. Tennessee played 3 different quarterbacks last season. And for him to get the stats and the touchdowns and the plays that you'll see when you Google, go back and, Google the Kentucky game that Josh Palmer had. He had a beautiful 1 foot inbound type play against Kentucky in the end zone. He did the same thing against Georgia. Like, you're getting an athletic wide receiver who can make those plays, those 25-yard fades to the corner of the end zone, who can go up and snag the football. That's the big difference to me between him and other receivers, that you can put him in different spots. But I promise you, if you test people down the field, he's just going to go up and grab the ball.
Well, I was going to ask you next, why should Chargers fans be excited? But I think you kind of just answered it. So, the last question I kind of have, I don't know if you would know this, but he mentioned that he played goalie in hockey. Did you guys get the chance to ask him about that? And how do you think, him playing hockey would kind of translate to him playing football?
Ooh, he's not on skates. I mean, that's the problem when it comes to football. But no, it did. It was very cool getting to know Josh, and getting to know him off the field is the big thing, and learning what he did growing up in Canada, which was, it's hockey. It's
Yeah.
hockey or soccer. That's kind of how it is. But yeah, he's told us those stories. Playing goalie, skating rinks that he was at and practicing, hockey. And then, in my mind, making that transition from what he was doing in Canada and realizing, man, I can be really good at football. I need to go somewhere that I can grow. And having the guts to do something like that. You're going from Canada all the way down to Florida.
Yeah.
That is tough. And you're entering a different type of environment when it comes to football. So for him to be able to transition his game and what he was doing and what he was good at, I think that goes to show the growth that he had at Tennessee over the 4 years that he was here. And also knowing that he was ready, because Josh could have come back this season. He could have come back this year with maybe a steady quarterback, could have been a first or second round type player. But I think he was comfortable enough in his game that he understood in the tape that he had laid out there that this was going to be the spot for him. And I couldn't be any happier. A third round spot for Josh Palmer. That's exactly where it needed to be.
Well, Trey, this has been awesome, man. We cannot thank you enough for the kind of info that you've been able to provide about Josh Palmer. I personally am really excited about him. You've mentioned all the games that he had against these great competition, and that's definitely something that I've noticed as well. So thanks again, Chargers fans. If you want to follow Tennessee football, you can follow Trey at Trey Wallace _ and at Rocky Top Insider and on Twitter. Again, Trey, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you having me on. I actually have I actually did an interview with Josh about a month ago about his training with Anquan Bolden that he did down in Florida. So if you want to go back and find that, you can. It's on the Rocky Top Insider page. Very cool article. Josh goes into detail about working with Bolden. So if he's working with Bolden, there's a little different strategy to his game. So I appreciate you having me, brother.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for bringing that up. I will definitely go check that out and definitely tweet that out to our followers as well. So thank you, Trey, so much. You have a good one, man.
Thank you, buddy.